We're ready to open October 16th Parks and Recreation meeting. We can all stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Vicki, if we can have a roll call.
Commissioner Armstrong.
Here.
Commissioner Boley. He is on his world tour around the country, around the world. Commissioner Cohen.
Here.
Commissioner Coronado is absent today. Commissioner De La Torre.
Present.
Commissioner Diaz is absent at the present. Commissioner Goodman.
Here.
Commissioner Lamort.
Here.
Commissioner Vice Chair Navarro.
Here.
Commissioner Pace is absent at this moment, and Chair Young.
Present. Thank you. And a report on the posting of the agenda.
The agenda for today's meeting was posted at City Hall, the Leisure Center, and the city's website last Thursday, October the 11th by 5 p.m. as required by established policies and procedures.
Thank you. Regarding the minutes, have you all had a chance to review them, and are there any corrections or changes from the minutes?
I have a question.
Question on the minutes?
I'm just curious about spelling, or, I mean, do we make comments or just pass it on to Vicki, or?
I think with
For the
the
notes?
spelling, we could just pass it on to Vicki on
Yeah.
the side. Perfect. If we can have a motion to accept the minutes?
Move to accept.
Second? Ellen? And all in favor? Aye. Actually, David, you'll have to, is it abstain or recuse? Because you were not here last time, so abstain. So it will be 6-1. Do we have any correspondence?
I do have one. Actually, it was an email that came in later today. Someone was corresponding with Stacy, and the gentleman unfortunately wasn't able to be at today's meeting, so he asked that I relay that information. He frequents Ruth Hardy and the Wellness Park quite often, and he is requested to have drinking fountains for the dogs there. So he's requesting that we consider putting a dog drinking fountain in throughout Ruth Hardy Park. So if we want to have that as a discussion item at a later meeting,
I would say
but
we can.
just wanted to let you know, he had asked that that be relayed to you for today's meeting.
Thank you. And now it's time for public comment. This time's been set aside for members of the public to address Parks and Recreation Commission on agenda items and items of general interest within the subject matter jurisdiction of the commission. Although the commission values your comments pursuant to the Brown Act, it generally cannot take any action on items not listed on the posted agenda. We assign 3 minutes for each speaker. So if we have speakers today, come on forward. Dean?
There. You could pass those, please. Commissioners, I'm Dean Mangione, USAPA Pickleball Ambassador for Palm Springs. I'd like to thank you for the improvements and repairs that you've made at Demuth Park so far. Hope you've been able to review the photos of the 3 park reports that I passed out last month. As a possible solution to one of the problems of the poorly working lights on the tennis courts, and as a joint effort between the tennis community and the pickleball community, I have some written bids that I'm passing out to replace the incandescent lights at Ruth Hardy Park with new LED lights. It's bids from Mr. Joe Corona, a Palm Springs resident, professional licensed contractor, and the unofficial leader of the tennis community at Ruth Hardy Park. These written bids range from $5,000 to $7,000 per court to install state-of-the-art LED sport court lights. Indicated most of the wiring there in place can be used. I understand you have to do a lighting study and obtain union bids. However, we wanted you to present our intentions to form a joint tennis pickleball community lighting improvement project at the parks, which we'd like to fund with a public-private partnership with the city. In connection with the newly formed Desert Highland Community Support Foundation, we're in the process of applying for grants and receiving donations for public health and wellness grants and improvement programs in the Coachella Valley, and would like the city to consider a 50-50 split with us on this project. On a sadder note, we lost one of our pickleball players on the courts this weekend at Ruth Hardy Park. Don Garsh, a Palm Springs resident, retired oral surgeon, had a heart attack on Sunday, experienced a king's death, relaxing under a chair, under a tree, after winning 2 pickleball games in a row. We noticed him slumped in his chair, and we did not respond to our shouts. We took a closer look, found he was not breathing, called 911, began CPR. He never regained consciousness and officially passed that evening at Desert Hospital. He was one of the founding members of our early morning pickleball weekends, and he would always help tape the courts. It's odd how some tragedies have a silver lining. In this case, it was nice to experience many of the members of the tennis committee coming to our aid immediately, expressing sincere concern for our injured player. After Don was taken by the paramedics, we had a moment of silence, and we all committed to learning CPR as a group. It's not going to be our last experience at this type of event. Even our youth player, Tyrell Johnson, 15 years old, was moved by this experience by the quick action of the fire department, the police, and all the adults that were there. Again, it's a tragic event, but it's also a bonding experience, a wake-up call for all of us to learn CPR. I hope you all know it or learn it in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Dean, and I'm very sorry for your loss.
Thank you.
Do we have any other speakers?
Sorry, I was late.
Hi, Mary.
This one?
There, yeah. Thank you.
I'm wearing my new T-shirt for my next round robin, and I brought some if anyone would like one. So I'm donating that. So that is October 28th, right before Nationals. Just to let you know, I am a Red Cross CPR instructor. I'd be glad to do a class for the community or for the pickleball community, and Dean and I have already talked about it. So Mary Barcelo, sorry. I'm Coachella Valley ambassador. We just finished a big regional tournament at Claremont where we were well represented by Desert ambassadors and players, and we're getting it ready for Nationals. And so I've got about 75 people already signed up for the one at Demuth, and thank you for all your help getting that set up. If any of you would like to come, you get a free entry, so I'd love to have you come out there. And I came to say thank you for all the work you guys did after the last meeting. It smells good over there. There's DG, there's new net placings, I could tell a lot of the work's been done, so thank you. And I know you're working on the windscreen, so that's going to come after the wind dies down. So mainly, thanks for responding to our last meeting and whatever we can do to work together. Oh, our first youth tournament says Friday. Did you mention that? I did not. So this Friday, we're having a free round robin at JOJ for the youth community, and we're going to give them prizes and run King of the Court contests and stuff, and it'll be our first youth round robin that we're donating back to, so you're welcome to come out. It's going to be 3 o'clock? 3:30 to 5:30 at the JOJ this Friday, the 19th. Okay, thank you. And I will leave these with you.
Mary?
Mary, what time's the tournament on the 28th?
I have some flyers I'll bring. It starts like at 7 in the morning. Vicki has the facility use and all that stuff. It's at Demuth, and it'll go till about 2 o'clock. And yes, you're all welcome to come. You've been to one before,
yeah.
And people are coming by there all the time. We did walk through the bathrooms today. They looked good, too. So just want to let you know, thanks again for all your help.
Perfect. Thank you, Mary. Any other speakers? Great. With that being said, we're going to move on to city manager. David's not here. Did he send a report at all? Or?
No, he did not. No,
Was he going to join?
He was going to try and make today's meeting, but I haven't heard from him today.
Let's reorganize and maybe drop the park restrooms down to number 3 so that we might be able to get him into that. Does that work for you, or are you timing-wise okay? Or?
It's fine. What was
Okay.
he gonna add? Anything? I don't think.
Well, he may have, I don't know if he was going to add anything, but I think he wanted to try and be here. I did ask his secretary to put it on his schedule, and she...
Let's see if he shows up late, if you don't mind, because I'd like him to hear the fresh presentation if we can. With that being said, let's move on to the discussion on pickleball. If you don't mind, I'd like to start with the representative from.
Sure, we can do that.
Can we have you come up, sir, and introduce yourself and who you're working with?
And just so you know, I think it was 2 meetings ago when, actually it was the special meeting we had on the Saturday, the numerous complaints about the smell, the constant smell of the wastewater treatment plants. We had talked about having Doug be with us last meeting, but by the time I need to get the agenda, I heard from him after the fact, so we asked to invite him here today. So he's here to give us an update on the wastewater treatment plant and the work that's been done there over the last, God, I don't know, 3 or 4 months or longer. And so Doug's here to kind of brief us on what they've been doing the past few months over there, all the construction and stuff. And I noticed we had a comment made that was actually smelling a little better, so hopefully that was some of the work that they've done, so.
Hello, everyone. My name's Doug Lohr. I'm the plant manager. I work for Veolia. We operate the wastewater treatment plant for the city of Palm Springs. So we are just wrapping up an 18-month construction project that will take care of the majority of the odors. The odor problem was well known, and the interim steps that we had taken were very effective. We know that. And so the city designed the new sections of the treatment plant with complete odor control. The facilities were moved away from the fence line. Just some common sense steps were taken. We started up the new plant September 19th. So we're just really getting started with the odor control units themselves have living organisms, and it takes a while for that stuff to build up. But we monitor them daily. We've had 0 discharge from them, so we're good as far as that goes. And then one of the other things that we've done is we purchased some foggers. They sit on a 55-gallon drum, and 55 gallons of water, 1 bottle of Pine Sol, and it takes about 24 hours it just disperses it in the air. And we've set those up along the fence or along the street on the plant side of the tennis courts, in an attempt to mask any other smells that may happen. In the coming weeks, we are going to be creating odors because we have to clean out the old facilities. So the foggers will be going full bore, and I took notice of the tournament on the 28th, I believe. So we'll make sure we have everything going and we're not doing any work those days so we don't create any additional odors. So I think going forward, once we get the old plant cleaned out, you're not going to notice odors from the treatment plant anymore.
Question for you, Doug. Are you getting any complaints from the neighborhood as well as the park, or was it really just the park?
No, I haven't received, we haven't received an odor complaint for some time now. And actually, I didn't even know where the last complaint came from. I just had an AQMV inspector show up, and he couldn't tell me who filed the complaint. We prefer to deal with them direct. If you have a problem, contact me, come to this, whatever. We'll take care of it right there. That's what we do. That's what we want to do. We want to be good stewards to the city. So we weren't able to respond in that instance because we didn't know where the complaint was coming from. So, but like I said, we've taken steps to avoid further odor issues at the tennis courts.
Perfect. Thank you. Commissioner Goodman?
If I can just ask, what is your time frame when you said you're flushing out and, there should be a point where no more odor comes? What time frame are you looking at?
Well, it's going to take us 2 to 3 weeks minimum to clean out the old facilities. So we're looking at a month because we're not going to be able to start right away. They haven't put the roads in yet. The construction project's still winding up. So we're looking at a month, maybe 6 weeks at the outside, and all that will be taken care of and shouldn't be a problem.
Any other questions? Thank you very much for coming and speaking with us. We really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Thanks.
Thank you.
There are other items on the,
So at our last meeting, we got the letter from Mr. Mangione, who'd sent the letter to Dr. Reddy regarding signage posted on courts 7 and 8. And I know Commissioner Goodman, you'd mentioned you had looked through and couldn't find anything on Ordinance 65. So the ordinance, that Ordinance 1645 was actually amended the municipal code a number of years ago, and I'm trying to find my notes here because I've got several different ordinances that have been changed. So the 1645 that he made reference to was amended in March of 2004. And in that ordinance, city ordinance, pertains also to then the municipal code, which handles Parks and Recreation, which is section 114460. And item, for lack of a better term, item 18 on the agenda, in that municipal code, talks about signs. And so the ordinance states that post, place, erect, or leave posted, placed, or erected any commercial or non-commercial bill, handbill, circular, notice, paper, or advertising device, or a matter of any kind in or upon any building, structure, pole, wire, or other architectural or natural feature of whatever character, except upon a bulletin board or such place especially designated and provided for such purposes, unless prior approval so to do has been obtained from the city manager, which approval shall be given only if the city manager determines that it would be affirmatively in the public interest to allow the use of public property for such purposes, or that constitutional principles require the same be allowed. So the city manager did look at this. Him and I had a brief discussion and asked that I bring it to the commission for your input on whether signage should be posted on the courts as requested by Mr. Mangione. And then I'll get your recommendation to Dr. Reddy, and he can determine how he wants to proceed.
Did the signs come down, the ones that were put up without city permission?
Yes.
Yes, they did, and this is the signage, sign that they're asking to be posted on the courts, reserving, actually stating, it doesn't say reserve, but it does state that these courts would be used for pickleball on the Saturday and Sundays from 7 a.m. to 12 p.m., so.
And this is on which courts?
I
Just
believe
the
it's
two-
7, 8, the two courts, yes.
Just the two far
Four
courts?
courts, right.
Comments, questions?
I haven't had success in organizing the subcommittee to get a date for a meeting with the tennis community. And so I haven't heard back from some commissioners and others, so I'm proposing, at least for me, I think it's important to speak with the tennis community, and I was really hoping that I would have had the opportunity with our subcommittee to actually meet with the tennis community before today's meeting, and I have not been able to. I propose that before a decision is made, that we actually meet with the tennis community and really hear from the tennis community, as we had discussed in our city meeting on that Saturday morning and at the last commission meeting. I'm prepared to have that meeting the first Saturday in November, if the subcommittee is available for that. And that would give us ample time to get information out to the tennis community at Ruth Hardy Park.
I guess I have a question. Has any other venue asked for such a sign from the city before? For example, have the tennis people said, nope, 1 through 6 is ours, just as the pickleball would be, no, it's ours during certain times? Has it ever been done before?
The only time that we do it is if someone reserves it and pays for it. So, for instance, I have a group coming in this weekend for a wedding, and part of their activities coming in starting on Friday is they're going to have a tennis tournament, and they're also having a golf tournament. So on Friday, they've paid to rent 3 of the courts at Ruth Hardy Park for 2 hours for their event. So there'll be signage posted saying this event is reserved for the such and such family, and between the hours that they're using it.
Yeah, I guess I had a question. So these courts right now, are these the courts that you can play tennis on as well? And then they want to have a sign the city puts up that tennis players can't use those courts at this time?
That's correct, because
Okay.
if you recall, the courts are asking to use are the ones that are 7-8 that are to the far northeast part of the courts. And those were the courts that Mr. Mangione has had conversations with the tennis players, and they've said those courts, they don't use it, they rarely use those, at least during the summertime. I don't know how it is during season, but
They're not being used by tennis players. Why would we need a special sign dedicating during these times to pickleball and deny other recreational uses? Conceivably, there's no pickleball players. Tennis would better use it. So it doesn't kind of make sense to me, except making some claim to these
Well,
courts. But I definitely do think that we need to talk to the tennis community, because we can't rely on representations from the pickleball community, what the tennis
right.
community
And
says.
not saying that the tennis players don't use those courts. It's just that during the time frame they've been there, they haven't been using them as often. So I know the couple times I went out there later in the day, I've seen tennis players out there during the week. But, to say, once season comes and we're starting to get into season, that could change. So they're asking that on Saturday and Sundays, those courts be made available to them between the hours of requesting. So, which means if they were guaranteed to have them, then there would be no tennis allowed on them during the time scheduled for them.
Commissioner Navarro?
I feel like we just got out of the summer, and a lot of people that I know play tennis have been gone. So waiting until, like you said, season begins, I think is fair for the tennis community to get another meeting with them and hearing from them first. I don't feel comfortable putting up signs on either this is a tennis court, a pickleball court, until we hear from the tennis community.
Commissioner Goodman?
I'm kind of curious if, in addition to reserving courts 7 and 8 on Saturday and Sunday morning, our suggestion 2 meetings ago was to provide Demuth Park all of the courts for pickleball to be able to manage the overflow. So would it also be all the courts at Demuth for overflow would be converted? And the 2 courts at Ruth Hardy, or do we go back to just having the designated pickleball courts at Demuth and new courts designated? I'm kind of curious about that.
Commissioner Cohen?
Yeah, I think that there's probably a bigger solution that we all need to figure out, which is how do you provide some opportunity, some access to the scarce resources. So until we can build additional courts and have money for that. I don't know how to answer, any of us can answer the question, Commissioner Goodman. But I can say that 2 things from my observations, having been to Ruth Hardy Park many mornings that the pickleball community is there. One, as for instance, this past weekend on Saturday, because of weather and other reasons, the pickleball community decided not to play at Ruth Hardy Park. And it was open for all the tennis people to play. And when we went there, there was nobody playing at all, pickleball or tennis. So it's not as if there are people marching around saying there's no courts for us to play anywhere. In addition, I don't think it's a question of reserving it only for pickleball, and if no one's using it, the tennis players can't use it. It's really just more of a priority. And when we're talking about having 8 tennis courts at Ruth Hardy Park, I don't think anybody's trying to say that they want parity, but there is some reasonable standard that I think we ought to consider, which is opportunity, if not parity, and having the 2 least favored courts from the tennis community being available for a couple of hours, just 2 days out of 7 a week, so a few hours, just 2 days out of the week, certainly seems to me to be on the right side of a light-handed touch on providing some opportunity at Ruth Hardy Park for pickleball. So I think we need to discuss this in a bigger context, but I just want to add those comments.
Well, I do want to remind everybody that there was a vote. It was either the last meeting or the prior meeting that was sent forward to the city manager, and there was, I don't have the information right in front of me, but there were some simple things. No pickleball would be played at Ruth Hardy Park, that we would be converting, I thought, if not both courts, but the court next to the pickleball courts was going to be hardline converted, and that last court would be one that would be shared, because it does have a single pickleball court on it in addition to the full-size court. and that was sort of the interim until we went further. So we do have to remember that we have pushed forward one requirement, so we need to check that out. The other concern is, I'll just stick with that. I think
It's a
right now,
recommendation,
that piece has been put forward and voted on by the commission. So I don't know, was that put forth into a document to?
It has not. I went back and reviewed the minutes, and there was the list that was, the subcommittee was recommending, but it was never put into a motion and was never voted on. It was voted, there were other items that were voted on. There were two items that we voted on. I think one was dealing with building some courts or taking, there was something with doing with the conversion of the courts
At Demuth?
at Demuth, and then there were two items that were voted on, two motions that were made. But the items that were recommended by the subcommittee never got a motion or second and was never voted on. I went back through and checked the minutes that were approved, and
I don't have them with me, but that wasn't my recollection.
Yeah, what we can do is table this for now. We do definitely need to push for the additional at Demuth. And one of the concerns I will say, I walk my dog at Ruth Hardy 7 days a week, and then 2 days a week, or at least one of the 2 days a week, I will drive over to Demuth. And one of the things that saddens me is, as busy as Ruth Hardy is, Demuth is probably got 4 or 5 people playing on it at 9 o'clock on a Saturday morning or a Sunday morning. So, we've relocated the play, but it isn't as if, because my concern was, oh, good, we've got 40 people in both locations.
Right.
We really do have a horrendous need that needs to be addressed immediately. That's not what I've experienced, but that was also summer weekends, which we're still a part of as we look forward to season starting. Pickleball is going to build just as well as tennis does. So I'm very supportive of us having a meeting with the tennis community, but then I would like us to come back to the table as quickly as possible and get a recommendation in front of Dr. Reddy, which I'm going to be very insistent that it go before City Council as quickly as possible, because it's going to take a little while to get the whys and wherefores of the money to do this. But Commissioner Goodman.
And you bring up a really good point, and that's what ultimately happens with Demuth. So let's just say Ruth Hardy Park is, split 50-50, and it's pickleball and tennis, and everybody is like really happy. What happens to the courts that have been restriped and, transferred over to pickleball at Demuth? And what do we do with these Demuth Park courts?
Now, I can't say that there are evening leagues, or I shouldn't call them leagues, but they're formalized groups of people who play in the evening, and I've not seen them playing at Ruth Hardy. They are playing at Demuth. So there are pickleball. Yeah, there are times that that's happening. But again, since I've been on this commission, my drive, as was the previous chairs, was to really get things into a community. When I listened to the community, it was, we really need to be together in one location. And as we strive to do that, there was an issue with smell. And then smell may be resolved now. So, I would like the subcommittee to really look at seriously, how can we kind of make everybody happy,
Right.
Or as happy as we could.
So can I, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Commissioner Armstrong?
Chair Young and Commissioner Goodman, I think both of you actually hit on some really important points, that we're going down this path. And what happens if we have spent all this time and money restriping, And I always like to say this, I was happy with the approach the pickleball community had at today's meeting, and I do want to mention for anyone listening or watching this that all these courts are in the city because of this commission and the staff. So you have to make sure everyone understands that we have helped create all these courts. There weren't any that long ago. But I do have to respond to Commissioner Cohen's comment about that signage. I mean, the experience we've had with this is that at one point, some pickleball community members said, let's just have one spot. Let's have Demuth. We'll leave Ruth Hardy alone. That's tennis. This signage, that's for weekend, and then it's going to go for certain months, and it's going to go to other courts. We have that experience with this, when we've allowed that to happen. One court by the next has been lost to tennis at Demuth. That's gonna, I can guarantee you, a year from now, we'll have a new sign, don't want a new sign up. So there's a bigger problem here. And so I really do think at some point, the city council needs to kind of give direction on money and what we're going to do, new courts or something like this. Because otherwise, we're going to have, you know, a few months about, now we want another court, another court, another court. And so I think we need some kind of other solution, because we're being put in an awkward position, I think.
At this point, what I'd like to do is table this and ask the subcommittee to please advance with your meeting. And that subcommittee is yourself, Commissioner Goodman,
Diaz.
Commissioner Cohen, and Commissioner Diaz.
And Johnny Costello.
And Johnny, okay.
Can I just ask?
Yes.
Would it be okay if we can just go on record, and Vicki, if you could just help us do this, that on Saturday morning, November 3rd, that we hold a tennis community conversation?
And where is it intended that will happen? At the courts?
Whatever facility the city sees fit. It could be at the courts, it can be over at the pavilion. But we can have an early morning meeting the same way we did with pickleball. If we can get it posted and get it advertised and really get a nice show of people, that'd be great.
Okay, just tell me where you'd like it, and
Okay.
then we can get with Denise Goolsby, get it out to the neighborhood groups,
Great.
probably the largest amount.
And
we
then
can
we'll
also
have
post
something
it on
for you at the
courts,
next
too.
commission meeting.
And that could be posted at all tennis courts?
Yes,
Even-
besides getting it out to the neighborhood
Perfect.
groups.
Thank you.
Okay.
Appreciate that.
Just need to determine the site, if you want to meet at Demuth again, or you want to meet at the courts, or,
I think we should be indoors, and I
Okay.
would probably say the pavilion if we don't have anything that's indoors over by Ruth Hardy.
okay.
Thank you. I'm going to make an executive decision here, assuming that Dr. Reddy isn't going to find time for us today. and has
I
to-
have one more thing
Oh,
on
go.
pickleball.
Yes.
I have given, it's come up a number of times, and then it came up again this week on having posted rules for pickleball courts. So I've given you, based on rules I have posted in Rancho Mirage, and I believe the other ones were from Desert Recreation District down in Palm Desert, trying to make a combination of those rules. And I guess there was a gentleman who spoke at public comments, probably either late spring in that timeframe, having issues of going out to the parks, and specifically Demuth, waiting to get on a court, and games get done, and several people still stay on the courts playing while there are people waiting to get on those courts. So again, he's asked about having rules posted so that, you know, everybody's being a good sport, that you've had the opportunity, you played your set, you need to come off, somebody else needs, you need to allow somebody to come on. So I don't know if the pickleball group wants to take a look at these and maybe have some discussion about yay, nay, yes, no, maybe, and come out with a final.
I noticed one missing, which I think would be something that pickleball players would want, and that's no food on courts. And I mention that only because I was at a tournament where people were walking out with their plates full of food during, and that's an active game, so you have to be a little careful. And I know that they would be really upset if grease or anything hit the ground and they had to deal with it, because it's not like it's easy to clean up. So my only note, I noticed that was not there, and I would ask that if you could add that to it. But I would like to make sure that these get run by the pickleball group so that they can weigh in on them and see if there's anything we're missing or anything that is, I don't see anything that they would, I believe, they would find inappropriate, but I would ask that food be added.
Okay.
Commissioner Cohen?
Well, one other thing, this is probably a little extraneous, but it belongs, I think, here, which is for those people who use particularly the Demuth courts in the evening, there's been yet another group that is now using mostly the tennis courts. And they're actually setting up the tennis courts for volleyball. And they're putting stakes, they're tying stakes onto the volleyball posts and setting up a higher net and playing volleyball on the tennis courts now. So I didn't know if you're aware of that, but there's yet another group that is now adding additional pressure to use the resources, and I just thought I would mention that.
Did the volleyball court on the grass ever get replaced after the, I don't know what
Animal
event.
shelter event?
Yeah,
Animal shelter event? I don't think it did not. I haven't seen it there.
because that may be what they're doing is countering the fact that they don't have, and actually, to tell you the truth, it seems like even where it was not a great place, because I would swear that between the court net and the dog park was about a total of 7 feet, which, unless you've got the dogs playing with, would be at competition, so maybe we could locate a place that would be appropriate. I mean, I think we are really just talking about sinking 2 poles and the appropriate.
And there is another site, more western in the park, where there is set up for volleyball as well. I think it's to the west, kind of southwest of the bathrooms building there.
Okay,
I think one of the reasons they liked using this was it's a hard surface, and 2, they had light at night. So I'm not sure we'll stop them by setting up another. I just wanted to let you know that there's even more use going on than
is
just
tennis
these 2.
appropriate on hard surface? I thought, or I'm sorry, volleyball, I thought that was,
Well,
Yeah,
if you
they-
play on a wood court, I mean, if you're playing indoors, you're playing
Wood, yeah,
on wood
but-
or some type of a.
afraid they'd be leaving a lot of skin behind if you
Well,
hit
yeah,
and skid.
They could.
Commissioner Lamort?
Well, I think it's a timing issue. When we met with Dr. Reddy about the bathroom issue, he suggested that they are going to be putting together a budget for building within the next 30 days. So my suggestion is, if we're going to meet on November 3rd, we might even have another meeting just to have a proposal to give to him as soon as possible. Because he told me they're putting together their budget for the next 2 years, and they're going to be doing it within the next 30 days. So I think there is some timeliness to getting, especially if we're considering building 2 more pickleball courts. Okay, where's the money going to come from? I think he should know that that might be needed to be put in the budget.
Well, if there's a timing issue, it may require a special meeting. I wouldn't want to miss the opportunity to get the budget to Dr. Reddy, because the meeting's on November 3rd, and then, we're waiting until the middle of the month. So let's watch the dates, and Vicki, if necessary, as long as it's, 72 hours notice, we could have a special meeting of this strictly to look at what your recommendations are for that, because I wouldn't want to miss a year or 2 year opportunity. Yes,
Well,
Commissioner
first of
Armstrong.
all, in the budget, I mean, why are we privileging this one recreational activity over others on our budget? So to have an extraordinary special meeting for one, I mean, that seems to me that we should be looking at the budget holistically. But I do have a question about that. Last year, we submitted a request, right, or not, for pickleball course at Capitol?
17-18 budget, so
Yeah.
last budget year I did.
And that
So,
was
just to be
rejected.
clear on what Dr. already said, the budget that they're looking at is the capital budget, Measure
Right.
J funding. That has not been allocated yet for this year's fiscal year. It went to council at the last council meeting, and council decided to put together a subcommittee, ad hoc committee, to actually review the top 5 projects that were recommended by Measure J. And every single project, a number of the council members asked to have more information on them. So right now, there's 5 major projects that have been recommended by the Measure J Commission, but again, it's council who has the final say on how the Measure J fundings are spent. So there's a subcommittee that's been put together to address those, and Dr. Reddy did say in about 30 days, hopefully they'll have the recommendation to come back to council to say, these are now the projects we would like to recommend funding.
Right,
for
and
this
so
fiscal
there's
year.
a process. I mean, and if this commission is just going to decide, oh, let's have another meeting for a special project without discussion of other things that we might want to make a recommendation to that subcommittee, city manager, that's sort of putting the cart before the horse in a sense of what all these other projects we may think are of a higher value or been waiting out there a longer time. So, if we have a special meeting, that seems almost kind of rigged to support something like that without a discussion about other things that we may feel are more important capital expenditures. I mean, we're having a restroom issue on this agenda. But I do have a question, though, about the usage. So we used to have a problem with people playing, I don't know if a problem, but people playing soccer on the courts there because the community didn't have a place to go play soccer that was lighted. And then there was some vandalism. So it's not just, pickleball and tennis and volleyball. Has all that stopped since this has all changed the
I
usage
think
of the
this,
courts?
I'm pretty sure the soccer has, because we've AOI, American Youth Soccer has been a little bit more cooperative with and it's mostly been the adults. Everybody wants prime time anywhere. Nobody wants to be later at night or earlier in the morning. Everybody wants to have the prime time usage of where everybody else is there. So AYSO has been been a good neighbor of allowing the other club teams to come in and use some of their space, try not to infringe too much on, but, the park is pretty well lit up at night. So there's a lot of open space out there for anyone wanting to do soccer that has the space they can have. I haven't gotten any word of where they've been cutting the nets down lately. The only complaint I really had is that someone felt the far east court net was now too high because the middle strap was missing. So I've got facilities, going to put a new strap on there so it'll make it back to regulation size. But this is the first I've heard of the volleyball players. But I know part of the volleyball players, they had that court right there by the tennis courts, was removed, and we had the Animal Shelter had their big event last year. Did not get put back in, and now obviously they want to play, and so they're taking over the tennis court to be able to do that with. So.
And Commissioner Armstrong, I want you to understand that my pushing for something to be done more quickly has nothing to do with rigging anything, but I do feel in the last year, the things that have come before us with the most need are pickleball and our bathrooms. And if it requires getting a meeting together sooner to get those into being thought about, I would be supportive of that, and I hope the rest of you would as well.
Well, I think the issue, though, is as we talk about over and over, we don't know what the need is. We have a highly organized community at one recreational sport. Does that reckon we have a lot of other communities that are differently organized? So until we actually know what the need is, which we've talked about for a long time, I don't know how we can say that.
I have to agree with Commissioner Armstrong.
So are we going to set this all back for a year while we try to figure out which needs to be done? I really want us to start moving on stuff and actively pursuing things to get them into approval. If we're not going to, I thought we had approved, something 2 months ago that now Vicki's saying was not approved, but we've got to start, I guess, getting stuff moved forward so we can get it done. We can wait 3 years and study things until we're blue in the face, but we're just going to have irritated people going into City Hall and making requests directly. They can just skip the foundation or the commission.
But I guess the question also is do we have any idea of the Measure J proposals actually being anything with Parks and Rec?
Their main emphasis this go-around was safety. So one of the top things on the list is the bollards in the downtown. So when we have all of our special events, we're not just putting up barricades, we actually have the bollards that will come up to prevent vehicles from entering our event space and, having a major accident. So there's allocation for restrooms, I think $400,000 for that. The police department had an emergency system that was being approved because, again, a safety issue. I can't remember the other two items that were on there, but they were all safety related.
If it's not Parks and Recs related, then there's no reason to have a special meeting and organize and talk about capital improvements if indeed it's not even on the agenda.
So why did Dr. Reddy invite us to put something forth?
Well, I don't want to step on Miguel's
That's
presentation.
Part of my presentation.
So
Okay.
we'll-
So when we're done with this, I could go
He
into that.
can
a
go
little
into
I
that
think
as well.
we've beaten this to submission, so let's move forward if everybody can agree to that.
Do you want to touch on just briefly the Paul and Bob's request, since it was just be very brief? And then
Okay,
Miguel.
real quickly, we've been asked to support the ordinance that they've got placed before the city. My understanding is it was on for the first reading at the last meeting and is on for the second reading. And do we have the wording on the ordinance?
I don't, I couldn't find that, I didn't even see it in the staff report.
My recollection is that it is relative to youth being able to purchase
Tobacco.
tobacco products, and I'm not sure exactly how the law is stated. And unfortunately, they didn't include all of the wording. And I'm wondering, the second reading is tomorrow night?
Tomorrow night. And that means they can actually vote on it, and if the council votes, at least 3 votes yes, then it will become law, and will go into effect 30 days after it's been approved.
Yeah, unfortunately, they couldn't come today, and their verbiage here doesn't look, I can't find enough out of it to be able to ask the commission to stand behind and support the issue. If you are here tomorrow night at City Council, you're more than welcome to stand as an individual and support the issue. But at this point, I'm not going to ask you as a commission to step forward and make that recommendation. It's just there's not enough here for me to be able to regurgitate what their request is.
Right.
I apologize.
And at that meeting, when I get them confused, Paul and Bob, I believe Paul was one who spoke first. His comment was he had 2 things he wanted the commission to support. The one he really talked about at the meeting was the county ordinance, and never mentioned the city ordinance, even though he kind of did, but never really went into details on it. And of course, that is the one that has been moving forward first. And without knowing exactly if the county ordinance is going to be similar to what the city's ordinance is going to be, and I'm assuming that's what they're doing today in Riverside. So I will try and get some more information from them, and then try to get it out to you as soon as I have it, so you're at least kind of know what they're looking at and what the ordinance states. I know it's dealing with, we changed the law that now you have to be 21 to buy tobacco. So, and I guess there's still some issues with, people still being able to purchase, or people selling to those underage.
Well, my own concern is we as a commission of Parks and Recreation are supportive. We have no smoking in the parks, and we're supportive of what we can control, but I don't know that we have, other than it's, we're a nice name to associate, that we have any reach into the exactly. So I'm going to respectfully decline to request that you do anything about this. Thank you. With that being said, let's move to discussion on park restrooms. The subcommittee's work has been excellent.
I don't know if you wanted to stand and speak, or?
Okay, so. Sorry. So restrooms for our parks. So our subcommittee, ad hoc committee, which includes Commissioner Lamort Diaz, who's not here, and that's it. Oh, and Woolley, but he is out of the country. We met after our last meeting and called a meeting with City Manager David Reddy, because we wanted to get some more guidance and know what he is looking for. So we didn't spin around and give him something that he wasn't going to look into. So we went back to every single park, and we did a pretty thorough inspection of both the exterior, the interior, and we did a lot of research online of what other locations are using. And within our meeting, going back to our meeting with City Manager, he wants us to bring to the commission recommendations of pretty much whatever we feel is necessary for each location. So I asked him straight out if we want to recommend a new facility for this park. Is that the direction that you're pointing us to? He said yes. Give me an estimate of how much, not specifically bids for what they actually will look like, but kind of an estimate of an amount of what we're looking for. And that's kind of falling in between the 1.2 to 1.5 million. So after we go through the presentation, we decided on one of two options with each park: a completely new facility or renovations and repairs and keeping the foundation of the existing bathrooms that are there. And so it's kind of like half and half. So before we go into the conditions of each park, I give you two packets. Do you want one, Vicki? Because I have extra. The pictures, the second packet, so if we look at those for a second, that's what other parks have right now. And these look really nice compared to what we have. And I feel like we're really behind on so much. So the first picture, and let me see if I could bring it up so our audience, Stacy, could see. So this one in particular I really like because it's solar. It's very efficient. It's like anti-graffiti walls. I believe this one was in Colorado. And odorless floors. I mean, it's just really, really clean and polished. And the solar's in the top. And we have other designs here as well, too. This was in Arizona. Again, solar, you can see it up here. Again, it was very consistent with the odorless coating floors, the stainless amenities inside, anti-graffiti walls. And so that was pretty much the ideal that we kind of really liked. And then here's another one. I think this was also in Arizona. So southern part of Arizona is like really on top of it, like in the Phoenix, Tucson area, as well as a lot of Denver, Colorado, which I really like.
Single stalls.
They're single stalls, yeah. Let me see if I could go on to more. And then this one, I know, I can't open it. Shit. It won't let me open that one. But this one here is a concession stand, and it also has restrooms. So similar to what we have currently in Demuth, we have a concession stand with bathrooms in the back. This is a solar one as well, too. Very eco-friendly. There we go. And it's solar in the top. So nice, right? A lot of these are really, really nice. So that's kind of what's out there in other states. And then, so now going back to ours, we could start with Ruth Hardy, which is the first one that I could talk about. And Ruth Hardy, there's a little description. Everyone knows pretty much there's tennis courts, there's volleyball usage, picnic tables, basketball courts, drinking fountains, grills. There's a wellness park that also spills into the usage, a lot of dog usage and after-school activities. We have large events like the Desert AIDS Walk that's happening this weekend, Palm Springs Health Run in January, 1PS Picnic. So there's a lot of big events going on there. So the conditions of the restrooms, the exterior roof, the wood beams, the paint is coming off, chipping off. And so those, I didn't give you copies, but I have pictures for all those that we could show. So this is Ruth Hardy. This is the outside. Pretty sad. All of this is like chipping, the paint, dirty walls. And then the inside, this tile, it's also really bad. And then, so these are coming apart. That's the soap dispenser. This is the lighting. There's, I don't know if that's like mold or spider webs or, I don't know, but there's a lot of little creatures living in there. And these also are leaking, and they're kind of coming apart. So you could see very well that they're not really good. And I know on the men's side, there was only one stall. There was only one urinal, one toilet. So for this one, we're recommending a complete new facility. And so that's pretty much it. This is what we're going to suggest if we get something new. What it will look like, we don't know the actual design, but our recommendation will be to have something that's solar, very efficient, very eco-friendly, with the coating floor that's odorless, anti-graffiti walls, all of that all in one with a new facility. So Ruth Hardy was one of them. And in addition, adding another toilet, maybe like a bug-filled diffuser, and motion sensing lights as well too. So we found a lot of that inside the ones from the other states as well. Any questions on Ruth Hardy?
We still have paper towels.
I think
We must, yeah, because.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I remember seeing them in one of them.
Well, there's one other thing that I noticed in all of them. For some reason, people are afraid to flush them. Maybe they're afraid to touch the handle. I'm thinking we should also consider having automatic flushed
Yeah,
equipment.
right. Sensor
I mean,
flushing.
it's not
yeah,
listed here, but
yeah.
it should be.
Sensor flushing, yeah.
And Miguel, is it possible that we could also put in drinking fountains, and if, while we're doing that, there was a request for dog drinking fountain? And I don't know how much more that would add, but if there's already plumbing going in?
That I didn't research. I could go back and research on what that would cost, but if we recommend, we kind of have to have.
Are the drinking
Well-
fountains near the bathrooms?
There is one that's right, like here, maybe not. I guess there isn't any.
I don't think there's a
No.
drinking fountain at Ruth Hardy Park. It's a separate
It's a
area, and I'm not
separate-
sure it
by
even
the
works.
tennis courts, yeah.
Well, no, there's one directly left of where their picture is.
Oh, yeah.
There's one like
There is.
standing by the parking lots, all the way, well, you can't see it in the picture, but there is one there.
So I mean, I agree with the new facilities, the places, most of them have, like this one has them right here in between, here in between. This one, it could be off to the side. Here they are again. So yeah, I think so. Yep. Yep.
I have a question just in general. Are you guys recommending that then the existing structures be like torn down? Like,
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I just have a question for Vicky then about Ruth Hardy's. Like, do we know the age of that structure there?
I'm going to say probably that was built in the 60s, if not
Alright, so
earlier than that.
So there may be some historic preservation issues with that.
Yeah.
particular
Check into that.
site, Yeah, that we may want to look into.
I mean, if it would be noted. City clerk could tell us that very easily.
That's a good point, though.
Yep. Thank you. And so next we go into Demuth. This is our largest. We rated this a very high usage park. There's a lot going on, as we all know. I don't have to go over all the activities or events. And so there's different areas with facilities. So the first one being the one closest to the tennis courts, pickleball courts. Those are in pretty bad condition as well. And let me get the pictures up for that one. So that is, okay, so that's the inside of them. A lot of tile. There is no separation. That's just very weird. The outside is just very bad. There's a lot of this that's kind of the brick that's chipping off, that's coming down. A lot of the blue is also chipped on the other side. Cracks as well. All this tile on the wall too, there's some chip and just very dirty. And oh, that's the next one. So for this one, we also said a new facility, starting from scratch. So that's the recommendation for this one. And then going to the second area in Demuth, that's the main restroom building. This one, we're recommending just repairs and renovations. We think the actual structure is still pretty good. It just needs painting on the outside, like these beams. And there's a drinking fountain right there. And then the tile is actually not in that bad of condition, the outside tile. So for this one, a lot of cleaning, painting, and stainless steel, removing the white fixtures and putting the odorless coating grounds as well too. And then these have these walls, but there's no door, and someone standing on this side, the urinal could see over on this side. So as well, fixing all that to enclosing it, making it stainless steel.
And Commissioner, that is a separate bathroom from the blue building, what they call the blue bathrooms, because there's actually two bathrooms in that vicinity within maybe a 50 to 100 feet of each other.
Correct.
So what is on the screen now is the older bathroom buildings that were built in the early 80s with the cooperation of, at the time, it was Little League Baseball and youth soccer, provided the manpower, and the city provided, I think, $60,000 for them to build that, the bathrooms and the concession that's on the other side of the building. So,
And then the concession's the one you were talking about right now? Is that this one?
that's the newer concession,
Yeah,
yes.
so this is the new, so this one as well too, this is the bathrooms behind the newer concession. We didn't say new completely, just repairs and renovations. Again, the floor on this one's actually okay. It's just the toilets and the tile. And that's Demuth. Do you want to go into?
Just so you understand, there's 3 separate bathroom facilities at Demuth. There's one that's up by the baseball fields.
Actually, 4 facilities. 4 bathroom facilities.
Sure, because in the middle, there's 2.
Is 2,
I
right.
agree,
Right.
right. But the one that's over by the baseball diamonds, actually, to me, it looked very serviceable. That also has a concession stand.
Right, and that one was built in the early, mid-90s.
And I think that one would just be to put in new facility, you know, clean up the tile, fix the floor. But I don't think that
No.
any of the Demuth things need to be torn down, except
The one by the
first
tennis and
The
pickleball
first one up
courts,
by the
yeah.
pickleball and the tennis courts.
Yeah.
It's kind of falling apart.
Yeah. Do you,
Commissioner Armstrong's comment about Ruth Hardy might also lend to that first facility, because it looked pretty old. Do you think there's any issue with it being a historic building?
Again, that part was probably put in there, 'cause that part of the park was built in the early 60s. So whether it's historical, you know,
I hate
It's-
to have you guys drive a mile down the road and then find out you got to backpedal, so if your recommendation is to pull it down, that we
I'll look
figure
through
that
some of
out
the
up
files
front.
that I have on some of the older
Okay.
files that we have and see what might be in them.
yeah. Do you want to go into
Okay,
Victoria?
The other one was Victoria Park. Cute little park that's up there off of Racket Club. Volleyball, dog use. Also, it's right next to a school, so the kids do use that park. The park itself, to me, looked very nice. It's very clean. It's right across the street from a fire station. However, the bathroom there is another one that's, looks to me like original. I mean, you can see how awful the floor is. The thing is leaking. Behind, the tile is filthy. And need I say more? All you have to do is look at these.
Yeah, but this one is, I think this one's censored. This is a no, yeah, it might be a newer toilet.
Probably because it's the only one that's flush.
Yeah.
And you
Yeah.
can see, if you look on the ceiling of that, it's falling apart. And if you keep going, you'll see rust all over, look at over this, right underneath where it says men, you can see that the structure is rusted. To my mind, it's outlived its use. And so we would recommend that that be
A new one.
removed and a new one built. Maybe I'm new to Palm Springs, but I can't possibly see that a bathroom would be designated historical, but maybe I'm wrong about that.
It says here your recommendation for Victoria is repairs and renovations.
Well,
It doesn't say.
No, well then.
Oh, maybe I messed up. It is a new
It
for
should be.
Victoria. Yeah.
That's a mistake. It should be
Sorry.
replaced.
I might have switched the pages around too. Yeah. So then going over to Sunrise Park. Oh, yeah.
Victoria Park, and just clear up one thing about the historic properties. You know, Victoria Park, I walk my dog there, and, you know, our park restrooms are not just park restrooms, they're used by a lot of other people. And this particular one, if you're walking your dog in the morning, there are people who service pools, landscaping, they're using this park constantly, you know. So it is a small park, but the usage of the bathroom is large because it's convenient for people who have nowhere else to go. So, you know, one of my comments is whether that size is actually appropriate, given the kind of usage. It really, does get. And just a side comment about, the historic preservation, if something's over 50 years old, it's potentially eligible for the National Register of Historic Places. The reason I brought up Ruth Hardy is because if you actually look at, there's a certain design to that restroom that differs from the ones in Demuth. If you step back, I mean, I don't know who the architect is, but that particular one, I think there could be issues with it, so.
Thank you. So then we go over to Sunrise, and so I didn't even know there was one there, but there's one by the baseball field. So it's close to the parking lot. Yeah, by the stadium, And so that one is also in pretty bad condition, and it only has, as well, one toilet, one urinal, but there's a lot of like roof issues with this one. So there's graffiti. The light wasn't working at that time. I don't know if it is now. And this one was working. And this one we're also recommending a new one with at least 2 stalls on each side.
This is not part of the baseball. This isn't part of the baseball stadium, is it? Physically?
No, this is what we call the blockhouse. So you have the bathrooms on the side, and in the middle is storage.
Okay.
So on one side, Junior All-American Football has all their, pads and their equipment stored in the one, and the other side, they've got some stuff along with some other city stuff in there, so.
Thank you.
And a lot of the new ones that that I showed you pictures of in the beginning have a storage facility kind of area in between, or that's an option, if that's what we want to have. And then we have some additions. So you want to cover those? Dog Park and then Francis Stevens? Yeah.
I guess there are 3 that we recommend. There is no facility there. We think it might be. First is the dog park. It's heavily used, and I guess people have to, if they really got to go, they have to go all the way over to this over here. And it's really heavily used, and we just think we might place a single or a double there as well.
So these are the singles, just very quick. These are the singles. So this one's a solar, like a small one. I forgot which city's in. I think Boston. I don't know, but it's in between like the streets. So we thought that one was really nice. And then this one too is another small one. This one has a lot of storage space in the middle. I remember seeing it. These are the modular type, so less expensive, easier to place. I believe most of the companies construct them at their location and just bring them and drop them off. So this one, you see, it's still like on a truck, I think. But this is what we were thinking in the dog park.
Also, Francis Stevens Park, whenever there's a political rally or there's something over there, there really is, if that, what is that, the craft center that's right there, sometimes it isn't open. I mean, I've been there where there was a line out in front of coffee and they weren't buying coffee. They were trying to use the facility. So we suggest that something should be placed over there as well.
Something small like this.
Did you look at Barristo Park at all, and did you have any recommendation? Or?
We did, and both of the times I went there, it wasn't used a lot. There is basketball playing. But we feel that perhaps the youth that are playing there go to their home to use the restroom, and that one it wasn't a priority, but we could add it if that's something that we feel should be placed.
I just want to reiterate what Commissioner Cohen said, and that is if water fountains are going to be replaced or added, I don't think it's probably a lot of addition just to put in a dog fountain at the base of that water fountain. Just one high, one low.
And you can actually purchase them that way.
So that would be a request.
And Ruth Hardy Park, right? Or
Actually, anywhere that
Okay.
you're going to put in new fountains or add a fountain, I think we should look at dual fountains.
Okay.
And I'm not sure if this is a possibility at all, but if, just like we talked about automatic flushing, if there is a way to automatically release water in fountains, I am concerned about water that doesn't move regularly being on a dead end because of mosquitoes or other things that could become an issue and I wouldn't want people to get sick on our water because of the fact that it's not there. So it's just something to think about with that. The other thing is, if it's not cooled, people won't drink it anyway.
Right.
Because, you know, if it's sitting in a pipe and it's 120 degrees, it's going to take you 15 minutes to get anything down to 90 degrees, but it's something to think about.
So these are some pictures of like the floors with that coating. That again is they're very easy to clean. They don't hold the water as much. There's no leakage. There's no odor that sticks around either, which they kept mentioning over and over that that's kind of like the latest, this type of floor. Here we see it again.
The baseboard is kind of small. Is the baseboard,
Is that standard? The baseboard looks small, and I remember when Stacy was here, we talked about maybe increasing the size of that baseboard just a bit, but it
Yeah.
seems like that's standard.
Yeah.
4-inch.
And then this is really nice, but I don't think this was a park, but this was like the motion sensor lighting that could be just very narrow strips on the top on the roofs. Or something like this as well.
great job.
And that's it. Is there anything else?
Well, I just think if you were to flip through the pictures, I mean, I said it last meeting, you would see that all of the bathrooms need to be renovated. As a world-class city, I think we need to have world-class bathrooms, and I just think it doesn't reflect well on us as citizens or the city to have the rundown facilities, especially with the stained floors. No, I get it, that there's a lot of people that use it that for reasons other than its intended use. However, I really believe that concrete floors or odorless floors, you can go in there and hose it down, and no matter what goes on in there, if somebody gets power wash, you can clean it
Yeah,
up.
they said power
The
washing.
problem is the terracotta has been stained for so long, it's hard to get even the dirt out of it. And then I would just say, if you flip through the before pictures, they all look pretty awful. Demuth is the best, I mean, because they're the newest. But some of the others, I would go home first.
Right.
Actually, that brings a point up. They were not encouraged to look at indoor restrooms at any of the facilities, because one of the restrooms that I find most offensive is at Demuth Park inside the facility. And we've had several complaints about that one as well, is that we didn't.
What I got from our meeting when Dr. Eddie was here 2 meetings ago, or maybe it was the June meeting, his challenge was for the commission and to work with staff and him on the park restrooms. So I took that as meaning just the restrooms in the parks and not necessarily the buildings at this time. I mean, if you look at, Desert Highland, in reality, they really don't have a park restroom. If someone has an event in the park, he actually has to bring staff in to open the building on the outside of the building so they can enter into the building to get to the bathrooms. There are not actual park restrooms at Desert Highland. It is connected to the building and are not left open. They have to be opened by staff, and staff has to monitor the building while there's an event going on in the park, if they've requested use of the restrooms.
Yeah, I also took it as not the community center spaces, just the out. But I could be wrong. I don't know if we could ask him, or because we did not look at those.
Yeah, well, and my thought would be maybe we could reserve the right to offer a second go-around later on relative to indoor bathrooms. But I'm wondering if James O'Jesse should not be added to this report for exterior bathrooms. Now, I do wonder
You
about
could.
the design and stuff, but that's really up to somebody else. It's
Right.
just,
Bids and all that. Yeah.
I would think maybe we should be asking for outside, because if there is an event or, the baseball field is there, and if it happens to be a game during the time that the facility isn't open, we don't want them to have to, head home to use the restroom, so. I would like to say, actually to both subcommittees, the work that you guys are doing is really, really important, and it's really, really good. I mean, this report is excellent, and what the pickleball subcommittee did previously was really, a lot of work and a lot of time to put it together. This is another one that is excellent. It's put together well, it's organized, and you've got the best defense, and that's the pictures, because you show what we could be and what we are today. And I'd just like to thank you for that work, because I know being on a subcommittee isn't always easy and a lot of fun, but if we can make this kind of a change, wow.
Yeah.
It'd be more
So do we make a recommendation? Did good job, you guys.
And I could, if we recommend what we're suggesting, we could have the addition of I made notes, so like the drinking fountain, the dog fountain, and James or Jesse, you want added on there, we could do that as well,
If we
too.
could, please, yeah.
And there was another note that I made somewhere.
I think it was checking on whether they're covered by preservation.
Preservation, right, correct.
Barista, I wouldn't worry about. You've made your evaluation on that, and I'm
Yeah.
comfortable with that. But
I just had one other thought. The bathrooms, particularly for upgrading them, might be an appropriate place to consider locating defibrillator devices, the automatic emergency defibrillators that they're putting on in many public spaces. And it might seem a little gratuitous, but we just had someone die 2 days ago at Ruth Hardy Park. And if everybody knew wherever they were in the park that you could go to the restroom facility and find an AED device, it might be helpful. I don't know the cost of those or if there are grants monies available for it, but just something else I thought I'd throw in there as an idea.
I would think it should be added as a sub, because I think that would be a great idea these bathrooms are located close to activity centers and something happens to an adult or a child, if they're available, it'd be remarkable. Commissioner Armstrong?
Thank you. I want to say a couple of things. First, just a general comment about our parks. I know there's a difference between operating and infrastructure, but I think a lot of our issues, frankly, in the parks started after the recession, when the city decided to streamline departments and took maintenance away directly from Parks Department. I know there's been changes after that, but you can trace a lot of issues we were having in the parks from when Parks and Rec was not directly in charge of it, that our director has to go through somebody else to request something. And I see we're seeing some of the issues, I think, in my opinion, because of that change during the recession. And I also want to talk about Measure J a little bit, because there was an elected leader who came to my neighborhood organization a few weeks ago and talking about Measure J, and it seems the narrative that the city, or at least some people in the city, putting out is that there's been a large percentage of Measure J money that's gone to the parks. And when I was doing the math that this person put out, it seems a lot of that is actually the downtown park rather than our actual community parks. And so it does seem, when we're talking about Measure J these days, that they're pulling out this large percentage, saying Parks is getting its share, and that's really not completely accurate, at least our community parks. I would like, maybe when we move this along, if there's momentum in the city, to look at some sustainability issues as well, in lighting and the toilets, waterless toilets and flushless toilets and things like that, because this is kind of our opportunity to do that. And I did want to mention, the dog park is, special to me. And yes, people can use this building, but this building has limited hours. And so most of the time when people are there at the evening or on the weekends, this building isn't open. And until, in fact, before that, those trees were kind of cut out behind the fence there. I mean, particularly men were using that area as the bathroom, and that still does occur, So the dog park is seriously in need of something. So I'm really happy you guys looked at some kind of, something that could work but not be so expensive. So.
Well, to that point, Commissioner Armstrong, I don't even think we should refer to the City Hall as being the resource for that, because literally that park is open until 10 p.m. That doesn't cover at least 5 hours a night, and then Saturday and Sunday. So, yeah, I would agree with you that we should not even consider the city to be the alternate. We need a restroom there, like we do at Francis Stevens. So at this point, do you want to,
Well, I think the city manager's looking for something so he could get it on his agenda, because it's gonna be soon where he's gonna have to put in all these requests. So, like I said, I gave him this figure, and he also said that that's a figure that he will feel comfortable going to city council and saying this is what the commission is requesting.
so you want to put together a,
With these additions.
yeah, with, so that we can actually vote on it now, so it is recorded at this meeting, so.
Is that okay? So the recommendation being that a new facility for Ruth Hardy Park. Oh, sorry, thank you. A new facility for Ruth Hardy, Sunrise, Demuth, the one closest to the tennis pickleball courts, repairs and renovations to all the other ones there. Victoria, a new facility with additions for the more activity that we now know about, so at least like 2 stalls in each side. And also a modular, something small in the dog park, Francis Stevens, and James O'Jesse, with drinking fountains on all of them, and for dogs as well too. Looking into the preservation of all the structures so we don't tear down anything, or we won't even be able to proceed. And the emergency automatic AED, and for them to be sustainable.
And can we get a second to that?
A second.
Commissioner Goodman? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Perfect. Thank you for an excellent job. If we can go through, what I'd like to do is stop at each commissioner and ask if there are comments, any updates, or any things that you want added to a future meeting. We'll start with Commissioner Cohen.
First, just thank you for allowing me to serve. I take it seriously, so I appreciate that. And also, as I've talked to Chairman Young about, and I'll just make sure it's open for everybody, I would like to, in the future, be able to look at the hiking resources that the city has, because it's one of the reasons that people come to Palm Springs, and they're exceptional. And the city does have signage and other pieces, so at some point, it might become something that we can look at to see how we can enhance.
Perfect. Thank you. Commissioner Armstrong?
Yeah, I have a couple of things. So last commission meeting, we formed a subcommittee on naming rights. We haven't met. I've done a little bit of research, but we haven't actually met. But in the meantime, there was a request from the Sustainability Commission to consider naming a community garden after somebody. So we probably have to make sure we meet and maybe have some recommendation, or at least some discussion at the next meeting, because my impression is that this was something that some people would like fast-tracked, but today we haven't met, and I'll contact my fellow commissioners after this meeting and see if we can set up a meeting, maybe. So, that's it.
Thank you. I did, just so you know, I talked to Jay Verada, and he said he's very comfortable that he agrees that he would like your subcommittee to work on the whole structure as opposed to just doing these one-off things. I think it helps the city overall, so thank you. Commissioner Lamort.
I think the only thing is, we talked last time about perhaps changing the timing of the meeting to later in the day so that, other people could attend. And I'm just curious, how do we make that happen? Do we make that decision? Does it have to be a motion? But I do agree, I was talking to Jody, and she can't get here because of school and her kids, and I don't think it's unreasonable to have it later in the day. My question would be of Vicki. I know that staff doesn't work Friday, Saturday, Sunday, so probably for us to have a meeting on a Saturday morning would not be appropriate. Is that correct?
Well, the big thing too is you have to think consideration, you're going to be taped. So that not just only involves my staff and all of you, but it's the people who record these meetings coming in. When I looked at the schedule of current meetings and in talking with Jerry Feineman, who does the taping of our meetings, that Monday really is the one day that has the most availability to have meetings. But then we also have to take in consideration, there's a lot of holidays that fall on Mondays. So, you know, we can't go later on Tuesdays because we have sustainability right after us unless we go after them. You know, and I know there's been some issues of people saying that, okay, we're gonna make our meeting later because we wanna have more people involved. And then they found out they've moved the meeting and they still didn't get more involvement. It didn't create a more interest in people wanting to be on the commission and/or parents attending meetings to be able to provide input. So there's a number of things you have to kind of weigh, and I don't know if that's a more deeper discussion meeting.
One of our issues, and we probably do need to take this deeper, because one of the issues are we can't have it on a night when city council is on, and right now with districting, they're even moving from Wednesdays to Thursdays to have extra meetings, so they're meeting 2 nights a week.
Right, and originally
Fridays,
they were going to meet tonight, right after us, and
Yeah.
we were to be done by 4 o'clock, but
Yeah.
I think with some other changes, they moved the meeting to this coming Thursday instead of moving it to tonight, so.
I got a sense at the last meeting that this was almost required. It was expected that the meeting would move. That's what I walked away with.
Well, my recommendation is, I believe, and I've heard it said on the DS several times, that the belief is that meetings would be more highly attended by the public in the evening, and more commissioners would be able to serve if things were slightly later in the day, because many people, those of us who are not the retired privileged, work from 8 to 5 so they could fill in, and that they'd just be running to these meetings to serve. And I think we have to allow for that belief to happen. But the spaces are going to be few, and that's why I was asking that we get on choosing a time more quickly rather than waiting and having to come up with one. I know I would not be able to remain on the commission if it were on a Wednesday night, if it happened to be on a Wednesday night when there's city council meetings, because I attend the city council meetings. So that, every one of us probably has a little something, but maybe what we can do is send Vicki our limits, and she can spread them over what times would be available with filming. Because the other thing is, this is I'm amazed at how many people attend this meeting via television. I am told constantly, whether I'm walking into a building and somebody screams out, "We need more bathrooms," or, "We need more pickleball courts." People are weighing in. So, and I'm always amazed because it's not people I know from being at these meetings. So, I would like us to continue on this one and see if we could find a place where it would work. So, thank you, Commissioner Lamort. Commissioner Delatorre.
Yeah, I just kind of was going to say the same thing that Commissioner Lamort was saying, because I thought you were going to send out an email asking about, the times when we were available, but, but it doesn't really matter. I'm able to attend them anyways. And then I also just wanted to say, good job on this report, because it really is eye-opening to see the bathrooms in the different parks and then the bathrooms in the better parks in other states, So, so hopefully we can get those done, and they'll be really nice. And that's it.
Sir?
Well, just welcoming Commissioner Cohen to the commission. And I'm also a hiker, so now that I'm done with this project, I would love to explore whatever ideas you have, and then maybe form an ad hoc committee, because I think there's a lot of potential that could be within our hiking trails. And then just the other comment is, I know we talked about some participation in parades, and I don't know if we're still considering that, because I know like Pride is coming up, and I think Veterans Day, and
A week apart.
yeah, so there's several of them coming up. So just wanted to get that discussed again if we do.
Okay, Commissioner Goodman.
Okay, 2 things. I was just reminded from today's discussion, I believe that Measure J made a recommendation to City Council that Parks and Recs would actually receive money, and that our funding year would actually start 18-19, because it was going to skip a year. Or was it 19-20? But that there was a suggestion to City Council that it would be paid out over 2 years. And I don't know if we should revisit that conversation with Measure J or where it stands.
Well, if we recall, when you guys made that presentation and put all that effort in there and made the presentation to them, it finally came down to there were certain things they wanted to still fund. They felt the recreation part was important, but didn't want to fund it all at one time. So I believe it was supposed to be $2 million spread over 4 years, with the caveat, if they needed additional funding for the downtown park, that money would go to the downtown park. So I don't know if that's still the condition, that, they're still looking for more money and it would go towards the downtown park. So.
How do we revisit to find out where they are this year with those thoughts?
I sit on that committee, and I will ask them, because my belief is that they have not earmarked our $2 million as part of it, although maybe they don't need to earmark it, they just take it. But the number that they've come up with is larger than they originally budgeted for. But I've never heard anybody give a breakdown of this is what was budgeted and this is what was given to Parks and Recs, and we're taking a part of it or all of it. So I can ask at the next meeting to see, because I don't, in business accounting, you have to account for how the money comes and how it's used. Government, sometimes it just gets allocated, so I will ask them.
Thank you. And then my other one is on October 25th at 3 o'clock, there's a study session. It's here, and it is about commissions working together for future projects. So I heard about this through the Public Arts Commission. They had a great little block party this weekend. And I thought to myself, my God, this is fantastic. It's like Artscape, which is in a couple of other cities, and I could really see how Parks and Recs and Arts Commission could. I mean, it was a wonderful event. It was very small. It was their first year. And Ann told me, who is the chair of that commission, that on October 25th at 3 p.m. there is a study session. That's a Thursday. I will be out of town, and I would attend, but I won't be here. If somebody could attend as a representative of Parks and Recs, it'd be great.
Who's the study session? I'm amazed to hear about it from you. I mean, this is one of the things that really, really unsettles me, is that we hear about it. Had you not been there?
Right. And I do see, we've talked about sustainability, Arts Commission, Parks and Recs. It just seems like a natural fit. So I'm actually proposing somebody attend, and before we end our meeting today, I'd like to know who that person is.
If everybody can check your calendars, I would certainly like to
Thursday,
attend.
the 25th at 3 p.m. Let me see, Thursday, the 25th.
Fortunately, I have a board meeting. Is there any other commissioner that can attend?
I'll attend.
Thank you. And I have a red eye that evening, so there's a good chance I might be there with you. I have to check my
I'll
schedule.
have a drink with you after your red eye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
Appreciate it.
It would just be nice to hear what the belief is, and I would ask, it would have been nice to have been officially invited, I'm not sure who's formulating or what a study session is. Is that generally the activity of a subcommittee within?
Well, normally study sessions, I mean, years ago when council, and the weeks they didn't have council meetings, the following week they had a study session where it was, they get an open conversation, they talked about the things, it was kind of a set agenda, but they were doing things that normally they wouldn't do at a normal council meeting. There wasn't things they were taking action on, they were just having a study session of how things were going, maybe something needed a little more discussion. And so they used to hold study sessions every other week off of a council meeting. It'd be kind of like, I'll say more like a retreat or a special meeting, that, you get together, you have a specific topic you want to talk about, and
I'll find out more.
Thank you. Real quickly, the only thing I had was relative to the Pride Parade. I am not going to be riding with Parks and Recs this time. I'm going to be riding with another board that I sit on. But I would like to ask who would be available to ride with Parks and Recs, and so that we can determine if we need a vehicle or not. So, David, are you available for riding in the parade?
I believe so. Remind me of the date again, the 4th?
I want to say the 3rd, yeah. The 4th?
Sunday the 4th.
Sunday.
Yep, I'm available.
Commissioner Armstrong?
I'm committed to them.
Another group?
Yeah.
Okay. You're working? Okay, and are you available?
I can be there.
Great. I wish I could be with you, but
What time?
Sunday the 4th. We'll have to find out from our illustrious contact, and I'll send out an email to, I guess you'd have to send out an email to everybody. Are you going to be available to be with us, or are you?
I don't know.
Okay.
We'll see.
Great. And we can contact both Jody and Trent,
Trent
and Alan will not
Alan's
be
out of
back.
country, so.
Yeah, so, great. I think that's all I had. Well, I was going to mention that I will get you the details of the people who are involved in hiking here in the city who have talked about coming and meeting with us, and I asked them to hold off until we had members of the commission who could work together on it. So I will get you their names, and I will call them and see if they could be available at the next meeting to talk about what they want to talk to us about relative to hiking. I do understand that we have a very limited point on hiking. Much of it is tribal land, and some of it is it county or state land? County land, and that we fit in there. But I think coming together and understanding how we merge together and what we can do would be remarkable.
I'm just curious, I'm sorry, one more thing. Are we supposed to do something with this lighting? Was this just some, enjoyable literature to take home with us, or do we?
I would say Vicki may be able to enter it into the report, but I don't think that we can do anything with it. We don't do the hiring, and there are city limitations relative to
Right,
what companies and contractors can be engaged. So I think, Vicki, you could probably forward this as an attachment, but
I can, I was listening to Mr. Mangione talk. He kept talking about the pickleball and tennis committee wanting to come together,
Right.
but does that meant they were coming up with the funding to
He
do
said
this?
public-private, so I think
So-
they were looking, and he said that the city would pay for half, and that they would raise half.
Okay,
but it may
well-
be based on these spends, and these spends may not be
Right,
within
and
the confines of the cities.
looking at the one, the first
Option A.
option, because of the dollar amount, we'd have to get multiple
Bids.
quotes. Anything over $5,000, we have
So both
to
of them.
have, actually, up to 5,000, depending on who we're dealing with in procurement. But normally, anything over 5,000, we have to have multiple quotes on, so.
And for the fact that within the city, it must be an affordable living wage and things of that nature, which often make these kinds of bids considerably less than.
And it really determines the dollar amount, because if it's what they would call a public works project, which is handled through engineering, that's when you get into having to pay prevailing wages. So that's where you get into some issues, and I can check with engineering on what that magical dollar amount is, but I don't think the $5,000 or $7,000 fall into that category.
Well, I would say with that, we'll.
Staff report.
Oh, thank you. Do we have a staff report? I was trying to put it away without it.
I do want to let all of you know that I have given my letter of retirement to Dr. Reddy, and I will be retiring at the end of this year. And when I was putting together this agenda, I realized that our next meeting is November 20th, which is the week of Thanksgiving. And I was thinking, I normally am gone that week, so this could be my last meeting, but I will be here for the November meeting if we're going to have one, because again, it's 2 days before Thanksgiving, so. And I'll be gone in December on vacation. So just want to let all of you be aware of that. It's coming quicker than I think.
Well, she'll be here next month, and we're gonna.
I'll be here next month.
Cupcakes.
And congratulations.
I'll delay my.
Congratulations.
You're going to love getting paid to stay home.
Well, I don't know if I'll stay home, but, I just hit 38 years on October 1st, so I've had a very good and long career with the city of Palm Springs. I've grown up quite a bit here, and it's been very rewarding, and it's time for me now to keep my promise to my son, and I told him I'd retire when he hit middle school. He's now a freshman in high school, so.
A few years off.
Yeah, a few years off. He keeps reminding me of that quite often. And so it's been a pleasure working with all of you, and I know some of you just coming on, so I won't have that much opportunity, but again, it's time for me to go into another phase of my life and my journey to,
You're going to be a hard act to follow, and I hope that you learn retirement better than I did. But
I'll try not to follow in yours and Sid's footsteps.
really, if
Can
you
you,
move into the city, we could talk about a commission
Will you move
spot.
the skate park sign forward before you head out?
We are, actually, I got it to the planning commission, actually the planning department, because he can actually approve that without it going to planning commission because of the size of the sign. He just wanted to make sure that the city manager was okay with it, and I got David's okay yesterday. So I've just got to move forward with doing the permit and getting the signs made, and we'll have them up before I'm gone.
If we get those up, I would or when we get those up, I would love to have retired
Cosmo.
Commissioner Davis come and have her picture taken with the sign, because that was definitely one of her driving forces. So.
Yeah, there's some things. Cosmo.
Was it? No, I remember.
And still, I know that at the last meeting, Commissioner Cohen was absent, but there was the comment made, Commissioner Lamort had a lot of questions about when can I talk, when can I, bring things up. And I'm so open to, if you want to meet and talk to me, I'm more than happy to sit down with you and, answer any questions you might have, fill you in a little bit on what really goes on in the department and all the crazy things that we do, so.
Did we were able to determine if the city attorney's class was taped and still available to people?
I haven't gotten an answer from them.
Okay.
I know they've been busy with things, and I've kind of sent it to them, but I've had them working on some other signage and stuff for me that need to get posted, so.
We should still check on that, because I would hope
I'll
it was
try and get
actually-
that, and then if it
yeah.
is, get you the link to where it's at,
Perfect.
so. Anyway.
Congratulations.
Congratulations. We're going to miss you. Yes,
One more thing,
Commissioner
Vicki,
Armstrong.
I was wondering, when did you start as the chair, like 2000?
October 1st, 1980 was my.
No, but in your present.
Present, June of 2010.
2010, and, I think I got involved like a year ago before that with the dog park and worked a lot with Vicki, and I know when you took this job, you weren't even quite sure, that you wanted to do it, but everything you've done in all these years for the parks, everyone really appreciates it. So, and I appreciate all the time I got to work with you and everything. So,
I appreciate that, thank you.
Great. Well, with that being said, a little sadly, we will adjourn until our meeting on November 20th.